comes to hot hatches, there's really one that I've always really wanted, and no surprise, that's the Focus RS. When the original one came out, I believe, what is that, 2002 or so, and I had a Mark 1 Focus. I absolutely fell in love with the first generation Focus RS. It became a car that it was too good to be true that such an awesome thing existed, and we knew that there's no way we would ever have an RS in the United States. It would just have to be something that we always looked at, like the Cosworth Escort is, just something only the Europeans got and we would never see. Well, fast forward to 2017, and here I am sitting in a brand new 2017 Focus RS. So yeah, this is the Mark III RS that I'm in. This is my dad's car that we just took delivery of just a few weeks ago. And we installed, of course, the Mountune B2 package, if you've been following along. And the reason for that is well, what fun is leaving things stock? Anytime I can wrench on something, I'm going to go ahead and do it, because I sure do enjoy it. And I've been really just kind of putting the car through the paces over the last week, trying to really understand what is it like to live with a Focus RS, which is a car that I just ultimately always dreamed of driving, and maybe even one day owning. So in the time that I have been driving this car around, I've been pretty much driving it in what I'd consider normal day-to-day operation, running errands, going to the grocery store, going to work, taking coworkers to lunch. Basically what you do with a normal car. Not necessarily normal RS things, normal car things, meaning could you live with this thing on a daily basis? And what I'm finding out is, yeah, you could completely live with this car on a day-to-day basis. There's no reason why you couldn't. Right now we're in normal mode, which if you think about it, it's a little too normal for me. There's a lot of kind of criticism that goes on with the Focus RS, meaning that the suspension is too stiff, it's too loud, it's too rough, it's too this, it's too that, and I didn't find any of that to be the case. In fact, we're gonna go over and switch this thing into sport mode here. Here we go. Because you know what? Normal mode is for normal people. I guess if there's normal people that buy a Focus RS. But the sport mode's for me. When you get the pops out of the exhaust, the car is absolutely, it's just a blast to drive. So you can drive around this thing, you can take people places, you can go pick up your groceries, you can do all these things, and it makes all sorts of really cool rally car type sounds out the exhaust. One thing to note when you are in sport mode is that the steering gets considerably stiffer, but the shocks do not. The suspension doesn't change in sport mode. Just the steering feel is different. You get the exhaust noise out the back, you get the pops and the burbles and all that. The throttle response is much better. I've ridden in the press car. If you remember, we had that one earlier this year. I got a chance to ride along in that, couldn't drive it. And then I did have another opportunity to drive a completely stock Focus RS, and now I'm driving the B2 modified car from Mountune. And in all that, in fact, hey, there's another RS right over there. Usually I have never seen another one while driving, and there's the first one I saw right over there, nitrous blue one. But anyway, what I found out is when you have the car in normal mode, even with the tune and without the tune, the car really feels heavy, it feels unresponsive. It doesn't feel like a monster hot hatch. In fact, if I took delivery of this car and normal mode was the only mode that it came in, I think I would actually go ahead and just return the car and say, you know what, something's wrong with it. It's just not that much fun. You switch this thing over to sport mode, even tuned or not tuned, the car instantly comes to life, and it is an absolute riot to drive. It is so much fun to drive in sport mode. Just the little tweaks that whatever they did in the computer programming, and it's not just the exhaust pops and everything, it's the way the vehicle feels under acceleration. It's the way you just tip in the throttle and it wants to go. It feels like it's light on its feet, it's ready to take off. This thing feels like it's ready to just go down a tarmac stage. You should have the co-driver in here reading you off pace notes. It wants to go. And you don't get that feeling in normal mode. So if you have a Focus RS or you're looking at buying one, if you're going to go test drive it, put the thing in sport mode, because you know what? Normal mode just isn't that much fun. Which one of the other things you can do in sport mode that I've had a lot of fun playing with lately is I can go over here on the turn signal stalk here, and I can switch over to the stiffer suspension setting. Now, so many journalists will tell you that the stiff suspension setting is unsuitable for anything other than a perfectly smooth racetrack. That's not the case at all. I've driven up and down the highway, I've driven down back roads, I've driven down just about anything. I haven't driven on really horrible, like downtown Detroit or big city type roads, but I don't have to drive there anyway, so I'm not really worried about it. But driving around town in the highway and off ramps and on ramps and twisty bits and all that, and driving around with the stiffer suspension setting in sport mode, the car is a lot of fun. I don't find this to be rough, abusive, or harsh at all. In fact, if this was the only suspension setting it came with, I'd be totally happy with it. I wouldn't see any reason why to soften it up. Now, one thing that we did do on this car, which may have played a little bit of a role in how the vehicle feels, is we got rid of the 19-inch wheels and we installed 18-inch OZ Superturismos. In the 18-inch wheels, we also have a lot more sidewall, well, a little bit more sidewall than we had on the 19s. And I think that little bit extra sidewall, even though we have the tire pressures at exactly the factory setting, just that little bit extra sidewall, I think, really helps tone down the suspension, where you can actually enjoy the stiffer suspension setting without having a problem. I did not get an opportunity to drive a stock RS with the 19-inch wheels and go to the stiffer suspension setting, so I can't really comment on that. I did ride along with one like that and it felt okay, but sometimes being from the driver's seat, you get a much better perspective on the car. But I really do not find this car abusive. I don't find the ride harsh. I actually find the ride to be quite enjoyable. I love the exhaust sound. There's one thing my Fiesta ST I have not been able to get nailed down yet, is the exhaust sound. I have the intake sound perfect. I have the bypass valve dialed in, so it makes it sound exactly how I want to do it. But I haven't been able to get the exhaust sound. The RS has the exhaust sound that I've always wanted, but it has the very weird intake sound, and I haven't been able to really figure out exactly why. I don't know if that is because of the air filter that we put on it. It's got the Mountune air filter. Don't know if that's the reason, but it just doesn't have a really awesome intake sound. And when you do let off the throttle and you're in boost, the bypass valve makes a very small sound. You barely even hear it. So I don't know if this is maybe sound composer related or what's going on, but the intake sound isn't nearly as incredible as it is on my Fiesta ST. And honestly, Brandon's 1-liter Fiesta, which we did the same intake modifications to, has a beautiful intake sound, and we have not been able to find that in the RS. But besides all that, how is it to actually live with on a daily basis? It's fantastic. It's actually quite a bit quieter than my Fiesta ST. It feels a lot heavier. It feels way more grown up. Feels way more adult. I guess as much of an adult car as you can have, with a gigantic wing and a huge front air dam on it. But honestly, it feels very much like a grown-up adult's car. The Fiesta ST is way more rowdy and unrefined and raw, which I love. But I can take 3 other coworkers to lunch in this car and nobody has a problem with it. The Fiesta ST, when you say, hey, let's all go to lunch, pretty much whoever has to ride in the back would rather just drive separately. Just listen to that. That is awesome. I tell you what, they got the exhaust sound just spot on this car. I love it. But anyway, yeah, you can completely live with this thing. It is really, we haven't had a chance to drive it in all weather conditions yet, but for the most part, this thing's going to be suitable in rain. It's on the dry. You put your snow tires on, it'll be fine in the snow. There's no reason why you couldn't drive one of these things year-round. There's no reason why you can't call your buddies to lunch. You can take clients out to lunch with it if that's one of your things you have to do at your job. These are all things you can totally do with an RS. In fact, most of these things you can actually do better because of the larger size than you can with my Fiesta ST. One downfall of having a Focus RS, and basically the Fiesta ST the same way, you're really not going to impress a lot of people if you tell them, when they say, what kind of car do you drive? And you say, I have a Focus RS. They're going to look at you the same way they look at me when I tell them I have a Fiesta ST. They don't get it. But you know what? If you don't understand what this car is, I'm not really trying to impress you anyway, so I don't really care. This thing really is meant for people who know what the car is, love what the car is, and can enjoy what the car is. You're not going to impress anybody. You know, when if you're talking to somebody, you say, I drive a Focus RS or a Fiesta ST. Yeah, you're not going to impress anybody with it. That's okay. Who cares? You buy this thing because you want it, because you love it. That is what makes these things so special. And what an awesome thing that Ford has built. The Fiesta ST, the Focus ST, and the Focus RS. 3 wonderfully balanced performance cars that you can live with completely. More so than I think you can with like a Mustang GT350 or even the old GT500. The cars really are not all that usable in day-to-day life. And I actually basically have lost interest in the Mustang because of it. They've become very big. There's not a lot of room inside. They don't have a hatchback anymore. They don't fit anything I want to do with my lifestyle anymore. I love my Mustang hatchback, my Fox body. I have no interest in buying a new one. I would buy this or my Fiesta ST. I wouldn't look at anything else. So, anything I do not like about the car? Well, heel and toe downshifting is damn near impossible from the factory. So we had to modify the gas pedal placement. I moved it out a 1/4 inch and then added a Steeda gas pedal to it, so I have a little bit more room to get to it. That's really one of the only things that I would say was a big detractor right from the get-go that we had to fix. Very easy to fix, no problem at all. 2 screws and a spacer and a pedal pad, and you're back going again. So that's a pretty minor thing to do. One other thing that I'm starting to be concerned about is reliability, especially of the 2016 cars. They seem to be really suffering with some engine failures, and I don't exactly know why. I don't know if the 2017s are any different or not, but I can say I don't have any of those worries in my Fiesta ST. And so there is something to be said about the simplicity of the Fiesta ST versus this. I don't have to worry about a lot of the concerns of this car. How is it to work on? Well, the engine compartment is very tightly packed. It is a little bit more difficult to access everything in this car than it is on my Fiesta ST. Really, the Fiesta is brilliant to work on. It's got plenty of room in the engine compartment, a tiny little motor, a lot of room around it. You can get where you need to get to. Things are a lot tighter packed, and because of that, the car runs a lot hotter than my Fiesta ST does too. I've noticed the intake temps are a lot higher, the charge temps are much higher, so it runs a lot hotter. There's a lot of mass in that engine compartment. I think once that all gets hot, it's a little bit of an issue. But if I had an opportunity to buy one of these cars, would I buy it? I tell you what, that's a really tough thing to answer. Because I own a Fiesta ST and I absolutely love the car, it actually takes away a little bit from this car because the Fiesta is so much fun to drive, and you can really push it at the limit and really not get in too much trouble, unlike this car. Because of the price, everything also is more expensive. The car is more expensive, the tires are more expensive, the brakes are more expensive. All the modifying parts that you want to do to the car are more expensive than the Fiesta ST. And yes, while it is an absolutely brilliant car, it is a blast to drive. It is gorgeous to look at. For the money, I really would rather stick with my Fiesta ST. I love the car just that much. I don't quite fit the Focus RS 100%. I haven't been able to get the right position for everything that way I fit it in the car. But I love driving it. But I also love my Fiesta ST because of the price delta and because of how much more expensive everything is to do to this car. The Fiesta ST would still maintain to be my favorite car to own. In the future, when they don't make the Fiesta anymore, which is probably next year, and I have to find a replacement, I may actually consider looking for a used white Focus RS. Because I think this really is a wonderful car, and I think maybe if you find one that's been really well taken care of and got all the bugs sorted, worked out of it, I think on the used market this thing's going to be a lot more attractive to me just because the price point is going to be a little bit more where I'd want it to be. This is a really expensive Focus, there's no doubt about it, but the performance you get makes it a huge value. But I can have just as much fun with my Fiesta ST on the street for about half the price. So I hope you guys enjoyed kind of my thoughts and ramblings on about living with a Focus RS here for a week. Because I'm going to be disappointed to give it back, but on the same token, when I get in my when I go climbing my Fiesta ST, I feel perfectly at home and I don't miss this car at all. But it's a wonderful opportunity that I've had to be able to drive this car and enjoy it for a week and see what it's like. It's really been a little bit of a dream come true in the fact that there is an RS in America and you can go buy it. You have to wait a long time, but you can find them at dealer lots. There are a couple right here in Grand Haven that are for sale. You can actually go out and buy these things, and you really won't be disappointed if you do. But you may not be disappointed if you go buy a Fiesta ST at a way cheaper price point. So leave your comments below and subscribe to BRGT350 on YouTube. Talk to you guys later.